real quick, I wanted to hit this piece that I came out with this morning. It's over at Substack. It's what Trump gets wrong about the abortion stuff, right? The abortion limitation law. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday because, he did this Meet the Press interview and he was asked this question that he didn't answer very well. He was asked, if Democrats, or if Congress got to your desk a bill that would limit abortion at 15 weeks, would you sign it? And he went all over the place and he was like, I don't know. And then he went to DeSantis and he was mad about that and said that he thought it was, in fact, his direct quote was that it was the heartbeat bill there. Quote, I think what he did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake. So here's the thing. In order, I think, for the pro-life movement to be victorious, they have to be free to restrict or to ban abortion as birth control. I mean, we're there right now. You have 24 states that have moved to ban or restrict or are on the path to do so. Now, obviously, that was only obtained post-Roe. That was the Dobbs versus Jackson women's health case. And the Dobbs case undid the Roe argument that a woman's private decision to have an abortion was enshrined somewhere in the Constitution. Now, the justification that the pro-abortion group has used for a while, that's like shape-shifted throughout the years. And it's always kind of come back to this right to privacy argument, which is completely illogical, and not even Ruth Bader Ginsburg agreed with it. She thought it was wrongly determined and that it was just a shoddy judicial move. Now, that the states have reassumed the authority on abortion restrictions, I think is a greater measure of victory towards protecting life than the 15-week bans that you see proposed by these empty-headed politicians who are unaware that a 15-week national ban would likely override the 6 states that have already passed 6-week bans. Now, this all presumes that you would even get a 15-week ban passed in Congress. So do people actually think that Democrats would compromise on a 15-week ban, but yet still then allow states by themselves to further restrict or abolish the practice? I mean, so you would have Republican lawmakers then, without that guarantee, they would actually walk back state victories from 6 weeks to 15 weeks, because that, I promise you, will happen. So I understand the arguments that people make where they say that settling on the 15-week restrictions for abortion as birth control, like just defaulting to that as a refuge from any kind of debate, is a coward's compromise on life. And I think that they make a good point there, because you either believe in the sanctity of life or you don't. I also understand, though, the argument made from the pro-life legal eagles, because they argue that the 14th Amendment specifically states all persons born or naturalized in the United States. Thus, any sort of sweeping national effort that if you would undertake any kind of national effort to modify the amendment with wording, you would have to have it do so to recognize the unborn life as the unborn life of an American citizen. You would have to modify the language to include that recognition. Now, I don't disagree with their claim on the language in the 14th Amendment, but here's my question and concern. How would amending the 14th Amendment work with today's Democrats? How would that turn out for conservatives? 2/3 of Congress? Ratification of 3/4 of state legislatures? Or does anyone actually trust Democrats with a constitutional convention? The likes of which hasn't been held since the founders called one in 1787. Where the convention could literally write its own rules and very likely, not just potentially, but very likely be influenced by special interests. That people think that calling a constitutional convention is safer today or somehow more easily managed than the current legislative process that we now know, that absolutely bewilders me. Because I do not possess the suspension of disbelief that is required to buy into that argument. I don't. Now, I will say states are currently on track to do more in the name of life than any lawmaker could ever hope to deliver nationally. Which brings us to that Meet the Press interview. So Trump was asked whether or not he'd sign a 15-week ban on abortion if Congress passed it. Now, of course, he was asked this because Democrats want to use abortion as this get out the vote tactic, just like they did with 2022. And a lot of Republican candidates are terrified to answer this question because they know it's a trap. And they are hesitant to make themselves some sort of poster child for Democrat scare tactics. I get it. But there are multiple ways to answer this, and Trump should have known better and done better, and he did not. He went rhetorically searching for some kind of deflection, and then it came off as unprepared and weak. Now, 3 ways you could answer this. First one, you could say, well, if you mean lawmakers elected by the people, if they deliver to me a bill restricting abortion as birth control after 15 weeks, the time period on which the majority of Americans, Democrats, and Republicans have found consensus after years of polling, well, then yes. Now, as discussed, I don't necessarily think that that's the best path. I think it's maybe better than just outright blasting fetal heartbeat bills. He could have also said, well, if lawmakers elected by the people to represent their interests deliver to me a bill that includes the freedom for states to determine their own restrictions or outright abolition, then yes. Here's the problem, though. When you start doing, well, we'll do a 15-week nationally and then states are free to do more, you're risking making the debate on limitations look like a petty numbers game. Okay, so 15 weeks, why not 14, 13? You have to realize how that potentially pits momentum against pro-life abolitionists. Now, he could have said, quote, no, because I support the right of states to go further with their restrictions, such as a 6-week ban than Congress would ever allow. Now, that's the best answer. But Trump can't say that. He can't say that because it would inadvertently give credit to DeSantis. So he didn't want to do that. No governor from any state that's passed any of these limitations has said that their way is the pathway for any kind of national approach. Everybody has indicated that what works specifically in their state doesn't necessarily translate nationally. Trump didn't speak to that, though. He specifically called the Florida heartbeat bill terrible. Again, quote, I think what DeSantis did is terrible, and it's a terrible mistake. He's trying to play to independents during a primary, which is stupid. It's way too early for that. I don't know who's telling him to do that. He didn't do this that early last time in 2016. Pro-choice voters are never going to back him either. Because they just never will. They'll always go with a Democrat. Pro-life voters will feel betrayed. And don't think for a second that independents are somehow too disillusioned to see, or that they're not disillusioned, and they don't see that he looks like he's switching it up to grab for votes. And a lot of people like me are questioning his political acumen in doing this. I mean, why weaponize yourself for the left to use you against pro-life opponents? I mean, this is the guy who was in office when Roe was undone. I mean, this is part of his legacy. Do you know how many politicians would give a limb to define their legacy with something so historical? But he's like sprinting away from it to run to the left of the Republican platform. I mean, I know that personally, he's never been very pro-life, but he's always been motivated by positive affirmation. So the accolades that he received from the community that he lip serviced on these pro-life issues, it made the arrangement work, and it did a lot for pro-life. But now he said he would compromise with a deal that makes everybody happy. Verbatim, quote, I would sit down with both sides. I'd negotiate something. We'll end up with peace on the issue for the first time in 52 years. Just let me tell you what I do. I'm going to come together with all groups, and we're going to have something that's acceptable. End quote. Except that's not how abortion politics work. I mean, is he banking on support of his candidacy outweighing support for what many voters view as a wedge issue? Or life issues not being a driver in primary politics? Now we have this issue.